Entering the Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. This for UFC Argentina, coming from Buenos Aires, Argentina. The first time the UFC has ever stopped down in Argentina. So I brought in my Argentinian expert, Cody Saftic, to break it all down. You know everything about Argentina.
I wish I would have studied. I wish I knew you were going to throw that line, and I would have gotten at least like one phrase in Argentinian.
Had to get you on your toes.
What's the language in?
Spanish.
Stupid.
It's only Portuguese in Brazil.
Yeah, stupid.
Right, so this guy obviously knows nothing about South America.
Yeah,
but
clearly I wasn't the proper expert.
I think we will be able to break down some of these fights here. Before we get to that, let's get to the giveaways. Last week's winner, Mr. RX Beer 79. Congratulations. Money should be in your account or isn't in your account. Either way, it's coming. Ask anybody else who's won before. This week's giveaway, there's rules, obviously, this game. We'll just rehash them again. We got number one, give the episode a like. Without that, nothing is possible.
Give it a like. Pretty easy.
It's
very
not going
easy.
to happen. Number two, leave your DraftKings handle. And number three, Cody.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, seeing how I clearly don't know anything about South America, we always like to say, when we've got local fighters on the card, sometimes they might go to decision. Sometimes we get some greasy decisions, and we always like to go to that home cooking. What kind of cooking? Home cooking. But we usually, we know, if it's in Poland, you're dealing with the Polish sausage. If you're in Germany, you got some sauerkraut. If you're in Australia,
poutine.
Yeah, poutine. If you're in Australia, you got a little shrimp on the bobby. It's a very stereotypical dishes.
For sure.
But what's the stereotypical Argentine dish? So enlighten us in the comment section with your DK handle and a like of the show, and you may be getting the DK bucks. And once you get the DK bucks, then you can start making it DK rain on them DK hoes.
I'm not.
Do we?
What?
Do we have DK hoes yet? Well, either way,
I don't think so.
Get the DK bucks and then double up some money, and then we'll see what the future has in store.
I'm not allowed to win the draw, unfortunately. I think there would be a conflict of interest there. But if I've learned anything from Diego Maradona, it's the cocaine that he likes.
Ooh.
I don't think he eats very much. He just always, anytime he's out in public, he seems to be real fired up. So maybe that's a Argentinian trait. I don't know.
Isn't he a fat man now?
Well,
so how is he?
He doesn't
not
have to be
eating,
an
Paul?
athlete anymore.
How is he not eating?
fair enough. All right, odds and lines are subject to change. See website for actual odds. If you or anybody you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get into the action. We have Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Neil Magny. Ponzinibbio is 9,000 on DraftKings, minus 290 favorite. Neil Magny, 7,200 plus 245. What's your take here, Cody?
Yeah, I wouldn't play the 290 straight money line. It just seems like it's big value. Neil Magny's a guy that's just kind of always made a career of just being there. He's always just in these, not always, but either against top-level opposition that can blow him out, and that's what Santiago Ponzinibbio is going to try to do, then yeah, you can have some success against Neil Magny. But other than that, if he survives, he just grinds on you. He's got that length. He's got that grappling. He's incrementally just got a little bit better every single fight. The thing about him is he fights all the time. Mm-hmm. He's got a lot of experience in the UFC. He's been around the block a couple times, and he's learned a lot of things. So, you remember those fights where Sergio Moraes blows him out, and then all of a sudden it's like he's the one working on his grappling. And some of these fights where Lorenz Larkin smokes him in the first round, then he's the guy working on his striking. And all of a sudden, Hector Lombard has him rocked, but he can withstand that. And Hector Lombard's a classic case of this happening. But, weather the early storm and then just kind of work his way back into it. That's what he's been a master of. And in many ways, I think he might be able to do that to a guy like Santiago Ponzinibbio. We know what Pons brings to the table. I mean, he's a ferocious striker. He's the kind of guy that stands in front of you and likes to take your head off. But he doesn't particularly have great cardio, and that we've seen in his last couple of fights, namely, say, the Mike Perry fight or the Nordine Taleb fight. Maybe in the third round, it's not like he's, foot on the pedal. If he smokes you out of the water like he did Gunnar Nelson, then cardio's not going to be an issue. But for the most part, you say the Court McGee fight, it's a low-striking affair the longer the fight goes because maybe he gets tired just a little bit. This is a five-round fight against a guy, Neil Magny, that's been in Denver for a very long time, doesn't have cardio issues, always pushes that pace. And if Neil Magny gets his takedowns going, and he's a guy that can score multiple takedowns on you, then it's going to be a big problem for Santiago Ponzinibbio. So even though I think Ponzinibbio could get the job done, The 290 is a stay away and a half.
Yeah.
The 9,000 is not so bad because he's, 9,000 is what it is, but he's
GPP play.
Yeah, he's traditionally a guy that can go out and maybe get that first round stoppage on you. And we've seen in the past, he's got big striking, he's got big power. He's a forward fighter. And with Neil Magny, what are the couple times that he's had, problems in his career? It's guys backing him up, guys hurting him, guys kind of shaking that confidence early. If you let him, work a pace on you, then he grinds you over time. But Ponzinibbio is not kind of guy that wants to stay in there for a prolonged period of time. He kind of wants to get the job done early. So for the 9,000, I'd be willing to take the chance. The 7,200, I'd be also willing to take the chance because
sure.
if he's low owned and he's got a high upside, if he can go 5 rounds and get a stoppage victory or just a clear-cut unanimous decision, and you want grapplers, you want guys that are going to get 4 or 5 takedowns in a fight. You don't necessarily want a guy that's going to go out there and just have a straight striking battle, land 60, 70 significant strikes, and that's it. You want a guy that's going to get 40, 50 significant strikes, but get those takedowns, get those ground transitions, get a couple submission attempts. And Neil Magny is capable of all of that, so I see some good value on him.
Yeah, I can hear. I don't know if I trust Magny's takedowns, to be perfectly honest. I don't think he's a great wrestler by any stretch of the imagination. I think what we have seen from Pons is that, working at ATT, those skills are definitely coming along. So I think I definitely side with Ponzinibbio here, but I do echo a lot of the same sentiments that you have about Magny and about the value on this just being completely off. I understand that it's in Argentina. The crowd's going to be fired up for the local Argentinian fighter. And all of that jazz, but yeah, if he gets tired, we definitely always forget. Neil Magny pulled out a split decision win against Kelvin Gastelum, who was fighting for the middleweight championship. Like, this guy can go 5 rounds. He can fight in close fights. So if we get to round 3, things could get real dicey here. If Magny's still around, because we know Magny's not getting tired. He's definitely very, very well rounded. Nothing that he throws is going to back Ponzinibbio off. I think that really favors Ponzinibbio in the first 2, maybe 3 rounds. But we get in round 4, things are going to get really dicey. I like Ponzinibbio as a DraftKings play, but I can see the argument for Magny. Magny could be a slate breaker if everything kind of plays out the way that we're thinking.
Well, it could, because like you said, maybe that the one question mark we have on him is how good are his takedowns? Is he going to be able to consistently get down
Super
Santos,
tall and
Ponzinibbio?
skinny. Like, it's not a good frame, really, to try to get these takedowns.
Right. But short, stocky, very competent wrestler Kelvin Gastelum gave up 6 takedowns to Neil Magny. Very impressive. Hector Lombard, judo black belt, Olympic bronze medalist.
Gas bag, though.
Gave up 1 takedown to Neil Magny. Johnny Hendricks, D1 world champion or D1 champion at a high level, multiple time champion, got 1 takedown against Johnny
Condit got
Hendricks.
taken down a bunch of times too.
So it's he kind of can't wrestle like those other guys. But what I'm saying is that he just finds a way. He finds a way, especially if he's up against a cage. He can smother you against a cage. He uses that long length on him, and I just feel that. We're also forgetting that Ponzinibbio last fought Mike Perry in a fight that he didn't look great, considering that world-class guys make Perry look terrible. And he was in a fight with Mike Perry.
Yep.
But also, he was supposed to fight Kamaru Usman like 5 months later, and he busted his hand. And now he's actually coming off nearly a year-long layoff. So if his cardio's not in check, if he's got a little bit of ring rust, if his hand's an issue and he's not throwing it nearly as hard as he used to, well, those are all issues for him. And when he's a 3-1 favorite over Neil Magny, you don't want multiple issues to be thinking about. So even though the 9,000 is worth playing on some lineups, I'm not all in on Santiago Ponzinibbio, even though he's got high upside and he could get that quick finish.
We have Ricardo Lamas taking on Mirsad Bektic in the co-main event. Ricardo Lamas is 8,700 on DraftKings or not Mirsad Bektic, but is a minus 210 favorite. Darren Elkins, 7,500 plus 175. I think the guy Open Roll on Twitter had a very good point about this fight. He's just like, I see people all posting these bets on Darren Elkins. He's just like, why don't you just wait until he's plus 1,500 in round 3 after he's taken the biggest, most vicious beating that you've ever seen in your life and do that live? And I'm like, that's actually a very good point. We know what we're going to get with Elkins. Awesome cardio and an absurd ability to take damage. Like, that Volkanovski fight, I can't believe it went to decision. But Darren Elkins just kind of always survives. When he fought Mirsad Bektic, he just kind of always, he was just always there, and then all of a sudden the 3rd round KO when we saw Bektic getting tired. 3-round fight, Ricardo Lamas, he's done the dance before. He's won 5 rounds. I don't think his cardio is a big issue. But when you're laying that type of beating, this is the Homer Simpson type of fighting style, basically.
This is
literally what Darren Elkins does.
Yeah,
You can just land, and he's just not going to go anywhere. So some people are just like, I can't believe this guy won't disappear. And that's when Elkins gets you. There's no doubting that Ricardo Lamas has the more refined skills and the better ability, basically everywhere. But the heart, determination, Darren Elkins is always going to be there. I like Lamas to win. I think he beats him probably by decision, probably a pretty convincing decision. But, man, fading Elkins is a scary proposition at the best of times, because this guy, he's a mutant when it comes to his ability to take damage. So
yeah, you'll occasionally hear people say Justin Gaethje is the Homer style of MMA. It's like, no, he's not the Homer Simpson style, because he swings punches back the entire time until it takes a lot of damage. Don't get me wrong, but Darren Elkins, quite frankly, is wrestling's version of Homer Simpson. He takes a beating the first 2 rounds and he comes back. I think that's the knock on him. Not the knock on him. That's the book on him. Everybody knows Darren Elkins. And for that reason, he's going to get some respect in fights that he is outgunned in. When you look at Ricardo Lamas, probably a better wrestler. Elkins has got a good pedigree. He's a guy that's, Indiana bred, herky-jerky, grinds on you. But refined wrestling, maybe slight-ish to Ricardo Lamas. As far as the ground game goes, look, Lamas is a black belt, and a good black belt as well. He's a better grappler than Darren Elkins is. As far as stand-up goes, he's faster. He's got a way better kick arsenal. Dude's got sick kicks. Quicker hands, quicker everything. But yeah.
But none of that matters sometimes.
No, none of that matters, because Elkins is just always walking you down. He tires you out, and he finds a way. The thing is that I don't think he's got a particularly high finish percentage. Yeah, he got Mirsad Bektic late, but for the most part, it's like he's got to wear you out early, and I just don't see Lamas going away early enough. Lamas, he was on a great run, and he honestly did look not world class. He is world class. Don't get me wrong. He's not world championship level, but he looks like contender status. And that Josh Emmett fight seriously set him back. People will make the correlation that Josh Emmett is a team alpha male guy, but he's got very little in relation with Darren Elkins.
Elkins doesn't fit the mold of most of these guys.
Yeah, dude. They went there. They were short, stocky, super athletic college wrestlers, and he came in there with the nickname The Damage, because he just literally bleeds all the time. Headbutt central, head's always down, always grinding forward. But he's had difficulty with the guys that are just slightly better athletes than him, that are better wrestlers than him. It kind of just happens to him. It's kind of been a knock on Darren Elkins. Yeah, he's ultra tough, but the fights that really stand out are the Cochran Diaz fight and the Chad Mendes fight. Mendes is a good wrestler. He's got good power. He hits Elkins. He hurts Elkins. Elkins goes down. You don't really see that out of him. But the Cochran Diaz fight, Elkins is a better wrestler, but Cochran Diaz is a better grappler. And because most of Elkins' fights generally always end up being grappling affairs, the better grappler should have the advantage over him, and he ends up winning that. But it's more so that Dennis Bermudez fight, a couple fights back, is that Bermudez should be, on paper, the better wrestler, the better athlete, faster guy, better striker. All the same things that we're saying about Lamas, Bermudez had on Elkins. And that's a close fight, and it's a split decision win for Elkins. The thing is that Bermudez is built to break, whereas Lamas has got a lot better durability. So the minus 210, it's not great. I do think Lamas is the better fighter in this spot. Plus 175, Darren Elkins. Elkins is the dog. He's always going to be the dog. And you're right. Live bet the fight after 1 or 2 rounds, and you're going to probably get a better price.
He's probably going to lose early.
Well, he's super
Or he may keep it
durable.
competitive, but, if Lamas even wins round 1, and even if it's relatively close, I think they're going to be hanging a better than a plus 175 on it at that point.
Yeah, exactly. If Lamas wins the first round, you're going to get a much better price tag. And then if Lamas goes out there and wins the second round, then that's when a lot of people will be like, okay, well, here's Elkins' time to kick into gear. But even if he kicks into gear and he starts to wear on Lamas, he doesn't have the submission game to submit the black belt in Lamas. And he doesn't have that Josh Emmett raw power to just land that one big killer shot. So he needs to really rely on just grinding on Lamas. And Lamas is literally one fight removed. His last fight, a split decision to Mirsad Bektic. Just look at levels, right? And Bektic is all over Elkins. And then he fatigues. There's that one window. Elkins works his way back into it. He gets this legendary win that people will be talking about for 100 years. It was literally the sweetest thing of all time. Whereas Lamas fights Mirsad Bektic, and he's in it. You know what I mean? Skill for skill, he's with this guy. He loses the fight, and, Bektic is a top prospect. That'll go on to, bigger and greater things. But Lamas is still with it. Am I worried about his chin because of that Emmett thing? Maybe, but Elkins is not the kind of guy to chin check him. So I'm going to go with Lamas. I'm not super confident on it, but I do think that you got to take the guy who's the better athlete and has the better skills all around.
Yeah, everything lines up that he should be the better fighter, but if
happens
next
in
week
MMA.
we are sitting here going like, oh my God, Elkins won again, round 3, or, he turned it on late in the fight, none of us are going to be surprised. We have a Khalil Rountree taking on a Johnny Walker, Brazilian guy named Johnny Walker. I'm sure that's his real name. Khalil Rountree is 8,800 and a -190 favorite. Walker is 7,400 and plus 165. I can never get Khalil Rountree right, to be perfectly honest. One of the worst cards, worst slates of this year for me was when he was taking on Gokhan Saki.
Ooh, that one killed.
I really didn't see Khalil Rountree knocking out Glory Kickboxing heavyweight champion Gokhan Saki in the first round. That is not really how I saw that thing playing out. But the guy's got power. We know that. Watching a little bit of tape on Walker, this guy throws real loopy shots. He's kind of ugly. His win on the Brazilian Contender Series was against Frankenstein, our old boy.
Yeah.
Luis Henrique Frankenstein, the 37 other Brazilian names, whatever his name
That's
is.
why his name's Frankenstein. Exactly. You take a little bit of everything.
Take
and
everybody's
just
name, blend it together, call him whatever you want. We call him Frankenstein. And he ended up winning by decision. He dominated the fight for the most part, but lots of looping, sloppy striking. He really likes closing the distance and getting that tie clinch. Like, that is what he is going for constantly. And I think when he does that, but let it be known, usually wrong on Rountree. He shits the bed when I'm expecting him to do good things, and then he shits the bed for me, regardless of how things play out. But I think if I'm gonna play it out more times than not, this guy's gonna try to close the distance on Rountree. He's gonna try to get that plum clinch, and he's probably gonna eat a strike or like an elbow in close as he's trying to force him up. I don't see very much takedown ability because, like we know, Rountree, if you can take him down, you can neutralize him. You can do what Andrew Sanchez did to him on the Ultimate Fighter finale. That's a very, very good path to victory against Khalil Rountree. But I don't really see the takedown ability. Maybe if we get to round 3, that happens. But I think Rountree does get the knockout win here. That being said, remember it was like the Polish dude, only whatever, the guy who busted for steroids after he beat Rountree standing up, and he was able to piece him up. And like, that guy wasn't anything all that special either.
Oh,
so it's
terrible.
like Rountree is a really tough guy to figure out half the time. I'm going with him to win here, but like, I am not feeling confident about it. The line has been moving down towards closer to pick him. He was like -235 when I made the boards the other day, and people are kind of seeing like, hey, I'm not gonna lay -235
He's
on
very prone to
Khalil
shit.
Round. Oh, 100%.
Very, very prone.
So it is what it is. I'm going with Rountree, but I feel awful about it.
Yeah, well, how can you have any faith in Khalil Rountree? In fact, Khalil is not a very well-rounded tree because he's got pretty much about one trick in his pocket, and that's blast you within the first 5 minutes of the fight. His cardio is terrible. This is dating back to when he was on the Ultimate Fighter, and it was like, oh man, Corey Hendricks has got no shot against this guy. Like, this guy looked legit. I think he beat Mo Derice, who's actually pretty good, by body kick, soccer kick to the body, standing over a downed opponent. It was sick. This guy looked like he had all the parts. Trains at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas, actually Syndicate MMA in Las Vegas, and he looks good. Fights Corey Hendricks, who's terrible, and he loses. He says it's because of his buddy, but really it's because he has no ground game. Once he gets taken to the ground, he really gets exposed because his cardio is not great and his grappling's terrible. His takedown defense is honestly terrible. And then in the finale, he gets brought back as an injury replacement. He takes on Andrew Sanchez. That was a very sad and embarrassing fight because he had zero shot and stuff in the takedowns, had very big inability to get back up. And at one point, had to tell his mom, who was yelling at him from the sideline, like, yo, mom, shut up. I'm getting big brothered here in the worst kind of way. Get up, Khalil.
He says, I'm trying, mom.
That was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
All the same, he's had a limited run in the UFC. His fight with Tyson Pedro, again, Pedro's unheralded at the time. Rountree is just going to back this guy up, blast him. He does back him up. Then he ends up on the ground and gets submitted shortly thereafter. So his wins, because he does pick up some wins, he blasts Daniel Jolly out of there. He picks up a couple decent wins, but again, he has to knock you out in the first 5 minutes. He doesn't really seem to have anything beyond that.
No.
But you're right, that Michael Olenczuk fight, That was tailor-made for him to just probably blow this guy out of the first round, do exactly what everybody wants you to do. He has a phenomenal first round. He smoked this guy pillar to post in the first round.
He was dusted.
Unfortunately, in the second round, he had absolutely no gas in the tank and got pieced up. It was a terrible performance. You follow that back up where you catch one of the greatest kickboxers of the last decade. It's a big win, right? Now, he's back in the public perception. Oh, he's a big favorite. He was at 230, like you mentioned. That's fairly sizable. $8,800 on DraftKings. Obviously, he's got the public backing, but just know he's a one-trick pony. In fact, one-trick pony. Isn't his nickname the War Horse? He's a one-trick war horse, man. Like, he blasts you out quick, or he's going to fade out. And that's going to pose a lot of problems here against Johnny Walker, because both of those situations could very well arise. When you watch tape on Johnny Walker, he's too hittable. Like, he's not very athletic. He's not very fast. He doesn't have excellent footwork. He's probably going to take a couple shots in order to get that tie clinch. And you don't want to take a couple shots at Khalil Rountree. You want to close that distance up very fast, get a hold of him, neutralize him, and hopefully peel him to the ground. And if the wrestling's not up to snuff, then he's gonna struggle. We talk about Rountree struggling against wrestlers, but like, yo, dude, Andrew Sanchez was also a D1 All-American. Like, the guy knows how to wrestle. In this situation against Johnny Walker, I don't know. The other weird thing about Johnny Walker is that when you look at tape on him, he appears to be a striker. He's trying to get that tie clinch. He's trying to move forward. He's trying to throw those big looping right hands. But he comes from a jiu-jitsu base. I believe only a purple belt at this point. But he had competed a lot at blue belt level in gi jiu-jitsu, and he has a lot of submissions on his record. You'd think that he's tailor-made to taking down a guy like Rountree and submitting him, but you just don't see that on his recent tape on him. So I don't know. My heart tells me that he's going to get knocked out here. Johnny Walker's going to move in. He's one of those guys. Rountree knocks bums out in the first round, and not even just bums. A win over Gokhan Saki means something, but this is MMA, small little gloves, and when you're as big and ferocious as a guy like Rountree, he's going to hit you and he's going to hurt. But this is the kind of opponent where he blasts them out. Better level of opposition, I'm not taking Rountree. But in this situation, I will. And the last point here is that Johnny Walker is something like 6'5". So he stands very tall and very upright. Khalil Rountree, only like 6 feet tall. Short, compact guy. It's going to be a lot harder for Walker to physically get a hold of him and peel him to the ground. And because he's tall and upright, it's going to be big for that big straight left hand of Khalil Rountree coming right down the pipe. The flip side to that is if he is able to get the clinch, it's going to be a lot easier to knee the shorter man in Khalil Rountree. I just don't think he gets that clinch. So give me Rountree, $8,800. If he's going to score big, and when he wins, he scores big, I'm willing to take it. Minus 190, infinitely better than 230, but he's just not a trustworthy guy in that sense. So probably avoid him unless it comes down a little bit more.
We're going to move down the card. We have Cesar Mutante Ferreira taking on short notice replacement Ian Heinisch. Ferreira, 8,400 on DraftKings, minus 190 favorite. Heinisch is 7,800 and plus 165. We know with Mutanchi, and he seems to know with Mutanchi, that this guy, his chin is always going to be an issue. But he has become smart enough to know that is the issue, and he's worked on not putting himself into situations where his chin will be compromised. So we've seen this with a whole bunch of times with his fights, and frankly, he's become one of the unheralded, smarter fighters in the UFC now.
Yeah,
It's
good ring IQ.
100%.
Kudos to
a
him.
guy whose career looked like it was getting smashed. Like he was a prospect with he's jacked, he's got the look, he's Vitor Belfort's protege. Everything was the sky's the limit. And then you're like, oh, but his chin is not there. He is adapted, and you got to give him kudos for that. I think Heinisch, watching his fight on Dana White's Contender Series against Sumter, I believe his name was, he ended up in a lot of bad situations. He ends up in those situations on the ground, rolling around, transitions with a black belt the caliber of Cesar Mutanch. He's getting subbed early. On top of that, he's coming in short notice. I like Ferreira. People are always like, oh, watch out for that chin. It's just like, Mutanchi is aware enough about that chin. At 8,400 on DraftKings, we've seen it with the Roberson fight. Just like, if Mutanchi gets this guy to the ground,
he's black belt.
He's a very good one. He's going to take this take this to a whole different level. I think Heinisch, coming on short notice, isn't ready for this level of competition, and we're gonna play it off to him.
yeah, I mean, how many times can you bet against Cesar Ferreira's chin? I mean, we all know the narrative on this guy every time he fights is that people are going to be very suspect of the fact that he probably can't take a punch. But he's got a whole lot of other skill sets, like you alluded to. I mean, the guy's good on the ground. His wrestling's actually pretty serviceable in that he's an athletic guy. He's a strong guy. He's absolutely jacked. And he's able to just kind of muscle guys to the ground. Once guys are on the ground with him, he's got them in his realm. And he's looked very good in the last couple of fights. But a lot of those fights are against just the middling, low talent guys. And I'm not saying Ian Heinisch is not. And I know this is a short notice replacement for Tom Breeze, which would have been a tough fight. And similar game plan for Ferreira. I ain't standing with the boxing Tom Breeze. I'm just going to take the guy down. So, like, nothing really changes for him. That all works out. But when you look at, like, Oluwale Bangbase, Anthony Smith, who's on a total roll right now, but styles make fights, and he just took him down. He found the smart way. Jack Hermanson, Nate Marquardt, Carl Roberson. It's all just kind of like a really low level. So we keep applauding the fact that this guy's not taking damage anymore and that he's not leaving himself into a situation or where he can get hit and get knocked out. But he's also taking on guys where it's just like they're not even really power punchers and they're not really able to get him. Roberson is, but Roberson's ground game's just non-existent. And the thing with Ian Heinisch is I just got a gut feeling that he's going to pull this one off. He's a Factory X Muay Thai guy. If he's on, he's big, he's strong. He probably just keep the fight standing long enough that he lands that shot on Ferreira. I just got a feeling that Ferreira's the kind of guy that wins 2 in a row, maybe wins 3 in a row at best, but he's never going to be a top contender. He's always going to run into those issues eventually where someone's going to catch him. You know, even the Elias Theodorou fight, which he fought a good fight. He lost to Elias Theodorou, and that in itself is a big.
Won
that's
nothing
a big.
there.
No, it was a bad fight, and it's a fight that you could argue that he won, but it's a fight that you could argue that he lost, and in fact, he did lose on paper, anyways. And that's Elias Theodorou. And what was Elias able to do? Stuff some takedowns, score some takedowns, not do a whole lot. So I don't know. I feel like Ian could pull it off. Now it is South America. If it's a close decision, maybe they'll just decide to go with the Brazilian. But maybe they like action. Maybe they don't like just takedowns. Maybe they don't like just groundwork. Maybe if the fight does go the distance, Ian wins. But more chances are not, if Ian's going to win the fight, it's not going distance. He's going to catch Cesar and knock him out. So the thing that's tough for me is that $8,400 on Cesar Ferreira is actually a damn good price because, yeah, he could get the fight to the ground, he can get the submission, and he would pay a big amount. Even if he's not submitting him, if he's just taking him down, he's not a kind of guy that gets a whole lot of ground transitions because he's so smart. He does not want to risk you getting back up, so he'll hold you down. But I just got a feeling that not having as much time to study for a guy like I'm always pronouncing his name wrong, but
Heinisch?
Heinisch? Yeah.
That's what I'm going with.
He just maybe hasn't had enough time to prepare for Heinisch, to pronounce his name, just like myself. And that I just got a feeling he might get caught. For $7,800, I'm willing to take the chance. Not in every lineup. Again, not super confident, but I got a feeling that this guy's this guy's dealt with worse things in his life than a fist fight on a Saturday night in Argentina.
If you haven't read the article by Players Tribune, this guy has been to Rikers Island, which is like the biggest penitentiary in like New York State, like where all like the worst criminals go there. And it was because he sold ecstasy as a kid. He was 19 years old, I believe. And then he tried to flee and he did flee. And I don't know. There's a whole story. Read the whole article, Players Tribune. It's really, really cool. Like, it's very rare for an MMA fighter, especially like a debuting MMA fighter, to be featured in something that like this, where like they have NBA stars, NFL stars, like big sports guys get into this. But his story is so interesting. You know, he had to spend a bunch of years in jail and yada, yada, yada. Long story short, if he can survive Rikers, what's a night with Cesar Montancha about? I am still going with Montancha here.
Yeah. No, he's probably had bigger guys on him than Cesar Ferreira.
Oh, God.
Who's a big guy, don't get me wrong. But, you know, it's a big prison.
We got Marlon Vera taking on Guido Cannetti. Marlon Vera is 9,200 on DraftKings, minus 320 favorite. Guido Cannetti, 7,000 plus 260. Who you got?
You know, before we came in here, you mentioned that there was a lot of guys on the card that you were kind of categorizing as untrustworthy. And, you know, here's another fight. Marlon Vera is very untrustworthy. A lot of the times that you expect him to look good and get that big victory, he just looks okay, man. This is a guy that was really young when he first got showcased in the UFC. He was training at Jackson's MMA at the time, and he looks to have a very crafty submission game. He's kind of long, he's rangy, he moves decently well, decent footwork, decent athlete. And being that he's one of these South American fighters, the UFC kind of got behind him, kind of gave him a push. And wins over Brad Pickett and Brian Kelleher. That win over Brad Pickett, in fact, he's losing the fight. But what a spectacular KO. Again, over Brad Pickett. Tends to happen to him. But, dude, guy's got some crafty power. He's got big strikes. Not bad. Work in progress. The submission over Brian Kelleher. Kelleher is no joke. No slouch, especially in the grappling department. And Cheeto Vera slaps it on him. Like, fights with John Lineker where he lasts the distance. It's all there. He's a young, developing fighter. It's all there. But he never really seems to get over the hump. He never has that performance where it's like, all right, Cheeto's finally tying it all together. He's finally showing some consistency in his career. And that's a kind of a bit of an issue. His last fight with Wuji Boren, tailor-made for him to win. He's in China. He's taking on a fight.
A guy who doesn't belong at this level.
Guy that doesn't belong at this level. You know, Western fans are obviously not privy to anything about Wuji Boren. And goddamn, nice finish, don't get me wrong. But it wasn't like, here's Marlon Vera looking like Marlon Vera should against a low-level opposition. Here's Marlon Vera doing the same thing Marlon Vera always does, which is kind of just fight at his opponent's level. And that's an issue. I'm super impressed with that. Flip side to with Cannetti is that he's like a reverse guy. Marlon Vera, you have faith in him. He kind of lets you down. Cannetti, can't spell nothing. Cannetti without can. Yep. Zero expectations on this guy. And as a result, kind of makes you pay. No bigger than, obviously, what was his big upset? Hugo Viana. It was like, oh my God. On paper, he had no chance against Hugo Viana. He goes out there, gets his big win. Last time out, same thing. Diego Rivas. That's a unique situation because you got Cannetti, who's like 38 years old, on a 2-year break because USADA red flagged him. Turns out it was a tainted supplement, so whatever.
Everybody's on a tainted supplement.
Especially in Argentina. But it's a 2-year absence where he's kind of sitting on the sideline. Now you come back as a 38-year-old man, a lot of ring rust. They're setting you up to lose to Gabriel Rivas in his own backyard. You're the lowest level guy they could find on the roster. And unfortunately, Rivas is terrible and is that much worse than him, and he hustles them up. But if there's anything with Cannetti, he hustles guys up. There's no quitting this guy. When he's standing, he is just bombing you. Big punches. The power doesn't really translate, but then again, he's a small guy, right? But it's just he's the kind of guy that throws almost everything he's got into all of his strikes. Winging hooks, obviously, but can back you up. As far as his wrestling goes, you know, he just hustles you. He just keeps trying to work at you and grind at you. And whereas I think Marlon Vera is another one of these cases where he's better than Cannetti everywhere. He's a better wrestler. He's a better grappler. He's a better striker. But doesn't
he fights
deal
to the level
well.
of his competition.
Yeah, and he doesn't deal well with guys that are in his face, pressuring him the whole time, not giving him a chance to breathe. Some of these guys that are crafty strikers, they got to get into a rhythm. They got to get into a groove. Then they start to feel it, and then they get crafty, and then they start throwing whatever. The Yair Rodriguez state, you know. A lot of the guys, you know, Robin Black will call it like the flow state, whatever.
Sure.
But you get crafty, you get into a rhythm. You see it a lot in all types of fights, you know, whether it be boxing or kickboxing or whatever. But in this case, it's like Cannetti's the kind of guy that doesn't give you that moment. He's the kind of guy that just stays on you all the time. And that's kind of the way to beat crafty fighters is don't give them an opportunity to think about what they want to do. Just force them back. Now I know Yair was being forced back by Korean Zombie before he eventually landed that killer blow. But all the same, if that's a 3-round fight, Korean Zombie's maybe walking away with the decision. And sure enough, it's 1 second left. Like, what was the chance of that actually happening? So you can't look at that as, oh, Marlon Vera's going to catch him with some spinning shit because he knows how to do spinning shit, and Cannetti just kind of walks
Neither
forward.
one of us
Cannetti
were on
pressures
Twitter
guys.
being like, totally called, because he was behind on the scorecards until he knocked him out with 0 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was a close fight. We kind of called it that way, at least.
So the plus 260, it's kind of intriguing in that regard that it is 260, and Guido Cannetti has come through as a sizable dog a couple times in the past. He's not the worst option in the world. He's also Argentinian, so they're not giving him the worst matchup possible. They're giving him an okay matchup over a decent name. I mean, Vera has an okay name at the very least. And Cannetti's not going to finish this fight. It's going to go the distance. Yeah. And if it does go the distance and he needs a little bit of hometown cooking to help him out, well, then at least it's there for him. But because I don't think this fight's going to be a finish, well, Vera, I guess, could catch Cannetti. But Cannetti's not going to get the finish. He'll have to win that decision. The 7,000, it's cheap. It's nice. But it's still going to be a decision victory. I don't think he's going to be able to put away Marlon Vera.
No.
So
yeah, it's a stay away from me.
Yeah,
I think there's just
it's
no
kind of a stay away.
There's no value on Vera, especially that minus 320 line. Like, ugh.
No, 9,200.
I think this fight could be far too close for that to make any sort of sense. And yeah, Cannetti is a possible play. I don't even know if you could play him in cash because let's be honest, it's still Guido Cannetti. This guy could get finished early on. It's a stay away fight for the most part for me. So
yeah, see
how that plays out.
When I look at it on a price standpoint, for $200 extra, Neil Magny, it is a better play, it really is. And Johnny Walker, the extra $400, he just got a much higher ceiling because if he gets Khalil Rountree tired,
He gets out of round one,
then he finishes him.
Yep.
Whereas Cannetti's really gonna have to work his ass off to grind out a split, and it's not gonna be the kind of split where it's like, no, dude, he took him down 3 times in that round. It's gonna be like he had him up against the cage for a minute and a half, took him down for a minute and a half, held him up against the cage for a minute, and then got outstruck for a little bit, but he did enough cage work, he probably gets that
he
round.
scores like 60 points in a win. It's just like, that's if he gets that win, that's great. But if he gets the loss, he's got 30 points, and other people who take all the other guys around him are probably beaten at that point.
So on a personal standpoint, we'll move on. I would avoid the 9,200 on Marlon Vera and the 320, 100% both move. The 7,000, maybe just like the little sprinkle, but probably avoid. But the 260, if you're gonna take the 260, take Guido Cannetti by decision, and you'll get a way better price. And I just don't see him finishing him. So that would be the small play there if you want to go for that big dog shot.
We have Poliana Botelho taking on Cynthia Calvillo. Botelho 8,300 minus 155. Calvillo is 7,900 and plus 135. Penny, for your thoughts.
You know, this is the kind of fight that embodies why following a lot of sharp guys on Twitter is not always the best thing. And listening to a lot of good different shows, different podcasts. I'd give a quick shout out here, but quite honestly, there's a lot of good guys in the business. But sometimes you look at a fight and you just don't see it. And there's a lot of people on Poliana Botelho, and they're saying that this is the value pick, and, you know, the money's coming in on her for a reason, but I can't really get behind it. Because Cynthia Calvillo is talented, and if she just smothers her with that wrestling game and just really grinds her, then she'll get the victory. But also, that loss to Carla Esparza, as embarrassing as it was, it was embarrassing. As embarrassing as all that was probably good for her, because she genuinely thought at the end of that fight, she genuinely believed that she won. Fucking oblivious to what just occurred. She had her hands in the air.
She was the only person. Her mother was probably watching going like, he lost that one.
It was a shit fight, so I think a lot of cases you're like, oh, I won that shit round, but it was like, no, you got outstruck by Carla Esparza for 2 of the 3 rounds. I did give her 1 round, but she got out hustled, and that's an issue in itself. But I think losing that fight, when you're undefeated especially, sends you back to the drawing board. You got to look at things. You got to revamp yourself, come up with a new game plan, certainly. And your coaches can maybe look at that. You got to do more. She needs to do more. Against Carla Esparza, the wrestling was neutralized because maybe she couldn't really consistently take down Esparza, but it was going to be a task to take down Carla Esparza consistently. So now she needs to strike the whole time. And the thing with Cynthia Calvillo is she's made her mark in the UFC by being able to wrestle these girls. And now that she is in a fight where that's off the table that she needs to strike, turns out she's really not that good of a striker. Esparza's not a good striker, but she outworks opponents. And that's kind of just what happened here. I got to think that she's going to come back a better fighter. And against Poliana Botelho, who her last fight against Kondo, it's a 30-second knockout, so it looks fantastic, but it also does not really tell you all that much. And then prior to that, Pearl Gonzalez fight was not very good. Pearl Gonzalez had a lot of success, I think, in the clinch with her, and Pearl really didn't do anything in that fight. It was another bad fight. But there was moments in that fight where it's like, Vienna maybe isn't really able to get out of the clinch consistently enough for my liking. Botelho. So if Cynthia Calvillo uses the game plan of using that wrestling and getting into the clinch and smothering her, and using the striking periodically to get in the clinch and just try to rough this girl up, that I think she could win. The 7,900, not interested in Calvillo. The plus 135, it's probably not enough, but I honestly think Calvillo wins this fight. It's just I'm reading so many other people that are on Botelho.
This opened as basically a pick'em. Actually, Calvillo may have even been the favorite, and it's been steamed out of control.
So I hate
everybody.
I hate the whole
if
mush,
there is
mush
such
thing.
If there is one fight that's going to be
might
the
be Mush
unquote,
City, dog. This might be Mush City.
The quote unquote Twitter mush. This is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
So I'm not gonna lie. I'm doing Robin Black's notes for Brave, the Brave FC card or CF card in Bahrain, and Bare Knuckle Boxing Saturday in England. So I've been spending a lot of time doing notes on those 2 events. I'm going to have to look at it a couple more times, and obviously between here and Saturday, I'll have the time to do that. But for right now, I'm just going to label it as a pass, because
you just don't see the winner scoring all that much. It's a pretty competitive fight.
Yeah, it's a real competitive fight. It's a competitive fight, and that's why when people
you're
are
looking
so
for
certain,
dominance on DraftKings,
how can
right?
you be
You're looking
so
for people who are
certain in
dominant,
something that
getting
was close?
takedowns consistently. And
Yeah.
if the wrestling is negated and they stand on the feet, then you're kind of looking for just high volume, and I don't know if it'll be high volume. I mean, as you were saying, Botelho, when she took on Pearl Gonzalez, I think she scored okay in that, but But it's not a game changer.
No, I think a lot of the time
I don't think you need to be targeting this
When
fight.
you look at women's strawweights, you're looking for high volume, you're looking for high output. I just don't see it. The price tag's not quite right, the 8,300 and the 7,900, maybe because it's just going to be low scoring in my opinion. And yeah, Patel's the favorite for a reason. People like her for a reason. They're looking at the research. They're looking at the tape. Maybe they know something, but I'm going to need a couple more days anyways to figure it out and give a definitive answer.
We have my boy, Michel Prazeres, taking on Bartosz Fabinski. I'm going to
My
classify
boy.
as your boy.
Yeah.
Interesting clash here at 170 pounds, obviously. Michel Prazeres is 8,600 on DraftKings, a minus 185 favorite. Fabinski, 7,600 plus 160. Really, really popular dog pick is Bartosz Fabinski. I can understand the argument for it because we were, Prazeres missed weight at 155 so many times that they're like, dude, you just got to move up. This guy's 5'6". Like, he shouldn't be at this division, but he's just so thick. They call him Tractor or Trator for a reason. He's so
correct.
strong, and that did not affect him. We were talking about it. I was still on Prazeres against Zach Cummings, and it don't matter, man. This guy's just so strong. But Fabinski, his style is grind, takedown, and he's got good top control. And maybe this is the fight where it's like, okay, Prazeres, you being undersized at this weight class, this is the type of guy, Fabinski, who's just going to stick to a game plan of take you down and control you from top position. This could be a spot where finally, he meets his match and is, we can see why this guy should be fighting at 155 rather than 155 rather than 170. That all being said, I'm not turning my back on my boy here, Prazeres. I don't think you can muscle him around. I know Fabinski's probably bigger. He's in theory supposed to be stronger, but I don't know if that's true. When you have that low center of gravity, I think it's gonna be hard for Fabinski to get in on those hips and take this guy down. On the feet, I favor Prazeres, who's got power and he's not too bad. His gas tank, I think, gets overblown, and plus at 170, I think that helps him even more. Not that the guy was sucking himself dry, because he would usually miss by like 5-6 pounds. Don't get me wrong, at 155. But at 170, I think his gas tank is better. I'm not going against Prazeres. Like, I think he greasy weasels this one out, and we have another one. I'm going to fade the public or the more classic. A lot of people are on Fabinski this week.
Well, at least he's the dog, whereas a lot of people are on.
I'm going to stay away from him. I like Trator to get the job done here.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because you got two mold fighters here. You got two guys that are literally cut from a certain cloth, MMA lineage, if you will, Paul Shaughnessy. Bear with me.
Okay,
you got Prazeres, who may or may not be Francisco Trinaldo, who may or may not be Gleison Tibau. They are three small little fire hydrant
Better
aged Brazilians.
ground game than those guys.
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. When those guys are in their prime, at their best, it's a tough style to deal with. A lot of guys have struggled over the years, and that's why the three of those men have racked up a lot of victories. They have victories in the same way. They can knock you out. They can submit you. But they're little fire hydrants. They're hard to take down. They're always in your face. They're power guys. Mm-hmm. Whereas you got Bartosz Fabinski. He's cut from a different cloth. His lineage includes former UFC veteran and current PFL fighter Bruno Santos and John Fitch. These fuckers stay on you big time. They do not let you go. They do not give a shit if the fans are booing. They have one goal in mind: get a hold of you, wrestle you to the ground. To a higher extent, Ben Askren and Khabib fight almost the same way, but they're world class. And Bartosz Fabinski is not at that level. And in fact, as much as John Fitch fights at a world class level, he too is not a Ben Askren or a Khabib. But those lower level guys, like the thing with Bartosz Fabinski, if he fights lower level guys, he's going to smoke them every single time. And people will boo, and it will not matter. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He's had 3 unanimous decisions. A lot of people considered all 3 of those fights boring. Let me see that board on him right now. Look at this guy's...
It just left.
I was going to say, look at this guy's average points scored per fight.
107.5.
He takes people down and he ragdolls them, and then they get back up, and then he rips them back down. And he's just landing shots the entire way. His last fight against Emil Weber-Meek, I had him as the underdog. A lot of people were discrediting him. He came off a 2-year-long layoff, and he did gas out. But I think that's an attest to he had been off, and He just wasn't into the thick of things. He should have a little bit better cardio here. And it's the kind of fight where it's going to be hard to grind a guy like Prazeres, but Fabinski's got the size, man. He honestly does. You mentioned earlier, interesting point. This would be a fight where we're going to realize, should Prazeres be at 170 or should he be at 155 pounds? And the thing is, he shouldn't be at 155 pounds, but he really shouldn't be at 170. He's a prime candidate for the 165-pound division.
Fair.
Because he cannot make 155. We know he can't. He's either going to die trying, seriously fuck himself up trying, or he's just going to miss weight, 56, 58, does it all the time.
It was usually like 61.
Yeah. At 170, the issue is that he's something like 5'9". So taking on Bartosz Fabinski, he's giving up
He's
6.
5'6", man. Traktor
Yeah, sorry.
is short.
He's giving up 6 inches in height to Bartosz Fabinski, and that's no joke, man. That's a lot.
That makes it hard for the wrestling, though.
Well, see, it does, but the thing with Prazeres is that because he's a short, stocky power guy, he gasses out because he uses a lot of muscle. And Fabinski's going to be on him using just as much muscle. It's going to require him to use his own strength. So if we're going strength for strength, you got to go with the bigger guy. So I'm going to go Fabinski. I'm 3 for 3 on Fabinski, and it's so awful, but he scores really big. And you can go get a beer, you can go whatever, because you know when you watch a Bartosz Fabinski fight that you can fuck off for 10 minutes and come back, and the same thing's happening. He's on top of the other guy, grinding him away. It's very straightforward. I like Bartosz Fabinski. I will admit, when the fight first came out, I had Prazeres. But thinking more about it, aged Prazeres, small, taking this fight. He's stateside now, so he's going to have to travel to get there. He's going to tire.
break your heart, Cody.
He's going to tire.
He's going to break your
and
heart.
Fabinski's just going to wear on him. It's going to
happening.
be so ugly, but it's going to happen.
More Traktor. It's happening. All right, let's move on. We got Alexander Pantoja taking on Sasaki. Pantoja, 9,300 on DraftKings, minus 360 favorite. Sasaki is 6,900 and plus 300. I think Sasaki's going to be a very, very popular cash play on this slate. So cheap. He allows you to do so many other things.
Yeah, and he's tricky. You know, he wins when he's not supposed to. He sticks around.
He did get submitted by Formiga, but I go back to when he fought Wilson Hayes, who's also an absolute stud on the ground, and he was just able to survive down there.
Yeah.
And
Scoggins, he's losing, but the more you grapple with him, he's tricky. He finds a way.
100%.
That frame, especially at the
look
division.
at Pantoja, where he has struggled against Dustin Ortiz, who is the scramble master. Anybody who's listened to this for a long time knows that we are very, very high on Dustin Ortiz and his scrambling ability. He makes every kind of exchange very, very difficult. But that's where, he was getting, he had him in bad positions, but he wasn't able to close the show. And you do that against him, and you kind of, over time, he got a little bit more tired, and Dustin Ortiz stays at the same energy. I don't think, there is nothing that Sasaki will be able to throw that is going to stop Pantoja from moving forward. That is for damn sure. He's got to close the show, though. He's got to get that submission, and he's got to finish him off to really pay back that value at 9,300 on DraftKings. If you want Pantoja, you have to be confident that he's going to get to this ground. He's going to find that submission. He's going to get the finish. He's better on the feet for sure as well, but I could see this turning into a bit of a scramble fest because Sasaki fights just always kind of end up there at some point. If I had to play one of them, I'm playing Sasaki, but I don't think he gets the win. I do lean towards Pantoja because even if they stay on the feet, the more impressive, the more damaging shots are going to be landed by Pantoja, not by Sasaki. Sasaki likes throwing. He's got long limbs. He'll throw his jab. He'll use that range, but nothing is going to hurt him. I have Pantoja winning, but underwhelming in terms of his DraftKings price of 9,300.
Yeah, Sasaki's got no power. Even the few times that he's aggressive and gets in your face, don't get me wrong, he's got a willingness to throw, and sometimes he lands, crisp 1-2s, got the big long jab, got that big long frame, but nothing really generates enough power. He's just kind of got to frustrate you, get you to shoot in on him, and then try to make something happen. He's come through as the dog, obviously, a couple times before, and he's had a couple performances that he looks pretty decent. I think we both talked about them. The Wilson Hayes fight and the Justin Scoggins fight obviously namely come to mind, but it's just the thing about him is that since dropping down to 125, there's no flyweights like him. He's very unique in that sense. Maybe it's hard to get ready for him. Who knows? Pantoja's better everywhere. Pantoja, I wasn't fully sold on him coming out of the Ultimate Fighter. Didn't think he looked good. His split decision win over Eric Sheldon, not very good. Beats old man Neil Siri late in the fight. It is what it is. then Dustin Ortiz beats him. But he's young, dude. He's young, and he's getting better every time out. In his last fight against Brandon Moreno, another like-minded young guy who gave him a run on The Ultimate Fighter, what you saw from that fight is that Moreno really shocked him on The Ultimate Fighter. He's landing strikes on him. He's kind of got him frustrated. And then Pantoja finally figures out a way to win. Now, a couple years removed from that, you got Moreno training at an elite level, young guy. Everyone's high up on him. He's getting better every time. I backed him in that fight. I picked him. And he has not made the same improvements as Alexander Pantoja. Pantoja's a real prospect. Pantoja's a BJJ black belt. He's got decent striking. He's a better wrestler, he's a better grappler, and he's a better striker than Ulka Sasaki. Anywhere this fight takes place, he should be able to win. Am I worried a little bit about Sasaki getting in his face, backing him up, and kind of being the aggressor? Yeah, enough. But again, then Pantoja can just score those takedowns. And where Sasaki has had success snatching up submissions against guys like Scoggins, he also generally loses these wrestling exchanges, these grappling exchanges against guys that are just more physical than him, stronger than him. And that's what Pantoja is. Looking at the line, the 360, I understand it because Pantoja is probably one of the safer picks on this card. He really is. Yeah. You never like a guy for 360, especially middling flyweights who are probably going to be out of a job pretty soon anyways. You don't love that. But I understand it, and I would actually, consider parlaying him up. But the 9,300, I don't like because again, split decision win over Eric
that
Sheldon.
Price, he's gotta really dominate.
Sheldon can't really wrestle, and he's not a particularly finesse grappler. And yeah, that's a split decision that is close. Neil Seary, who is just a tough working man, worked an 8-hour shift prior to getting to the venue that night to fight him. He lasted 3 rounds, and then Dustin Ortiz and Brandon Moreno, 2 more fights that go the distance. So he's a low finish percentage guy, and Ulka Sasaki is crafty enough and a grappler as well. So being on his back the entire time is not him being out of his element. That maybe he survives, and if he survives, I don't like the 9,300. The 6,900, I see what you're saying. People will probably pay Sasaki because he's so cheap.
They hope that they can get 3 rounds. You get 30 points from him in cash, that'll play out.
That's the only way you can play him because I don't think he scores more than 30 points. And if you're willing to put him on a cash game team, lose, but save that much that you can pay up on a couple other guys, if that's your prerogative, it's an option.
I'm not in love with a bunch of the top of the board this week, to be perfectly honest.
It's a greasy card, Paul.
I like a lot of the mid-range, to be perfectly honest. That's probably how my builds are going to go this week. But let's move on to another high-priced guy. We got Humberto Bandenay taking on Austin Arnett. Bandenay is 8,900 minus 260 favorite. Arnett is 7,300 and plus 220. Arnett's manager should be really credited for the fact that this guy is 0-3 in the UFC and somehow is fighting a 4th time.
Yeah, T-Bug Gowdy got that treatment.
This guy's
he won his first fight.
Let's call a spade a spade. This guy's getting brought in to South America to lose to a South American fighter. It is what it it's obvious what is going. This guy has 3 losses. He lost to he lost to obviously Dawadu. He didn't look too bad there. He was able to take it, but Dawadu, I think we've kind of overblown him as a prospect. Sandhagen absolutely starched him, and the one before that, I can't cut.
It's Brandon Davis.
Brandon
it was
Davis.
Actually a Dana White Contenders Series
Yes.
fight. So he's only 0-2 in the UFC.
Fair enough.
Probably signed a 4-fight deal. They'll give him 3 straight losses overall, though. I know what you're saying. We all know why he's here.
He's getting brought in to lose. He is tough. We have learned that about him. His fights usually have a high volume. Bandenay is nothing special. Obviously his last fight was a loss against Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. Benitez, very, very underrated guy.
Way out of his league.
Way out of his league. I'm going to side with the hometown guy here, but I'm not in love with Bandenay. I don't think Bandenay really has all that much high potential moving forward. But I think he's got enough to get through Austin Arnett.
Yeah, see, this one is a tough fight because you're probably going to want shares in it. I think that the winning lineup could very well have them because Bandenay, $8,900, he's a finisher. He's always been a finisher. And if there's maybe the knock on Austin Arnett is that we've seen him get dusted a couple times in the past. He's susceptible for damage. He's being brought in here with his spotty 3-fight losing streak in front of more or less, not the hometown crowd, but I think when you're fighting from Peru, I believe it is, Argentina's got to feel like a hometown match. Yeah, we all kind of know what's going on here and why the match was set. So if Bandenay is going to go and get the finish, and he's capable of it, then you're going to want some shares at $8,900. Also on Arnett, flip side to that is that, yeah, he's tough, dude. Hakeem Dawadu is literally twice as badass as Bandenay, and he took some shots. He didn't look overly bad in that fight. What was his fight before that? Corey Sandhagen, a badass, a very tough guy who dropped him with a body shot. Is what it is. Fight before that, Brandon Davis, really not all that bad. Gave Zabit a go, at least attempted to give Zabit a go. Tough dude, durable dude, and again, it's a fight. So Austin Arnett, he's got a ballooned record because it's a nice looking record, pretty. He's 15-5, 3-fight losing streak. The guy was 15-2 before. Hasn't really fought shit. But when he does fight guys, it turns out, I think he's got some durability. So Bandenay, who's a very green, very raw guy, who's finishing schlubs because schlubs finish other schlubs, especially when they're a little slightly more refined. That finish percentage is not going to translate. I don't think he puts away Austin Arnett, and for $8,900, I would not be interested in taking him. The 260, again, I think he was slightly favored over Benitez. I don't know why he was favored over Benitez, but people were backing him. Oh, they want him to win. Similar to Diego Rivas. He was the favorite. Why was he the favorite? He was like a 4-1 favorite. No idea why he's that high, but because you think, a job is being done here. You got a lowly opponent coming in here to lose to them in their own settings.
He had a very highlight reel type of finish. People get excited about that.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's not real. That's just the way the sport. When you talk about small gloves and shin to chin, like that type of stuff happens in this sport.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's a 26-second knockout victory to win the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. So then it's like, oh, he's a tough champion. He had a big win. I think Martin Bravo was favored to beat him there as well. So here you go. He got a big dog with the big win. And now that guy who should still be a dog taking on a way better opponent, Gabriel Benitez, has a little bit of momentum. So now we've kind of got a better idea of where he's at. But he's got a lot of quick finishes. I think his last 3 or 4 fights have all been first-round finishes. So if he goes out there and he doesn't finish Austin Arnett, who's shown that he's got some decent durability, what's he going to look like? And that's a high price tag to pay for $8,900. But the reason why I say this one could be pivotal, for having on your lineups is that, well, because they're both proven finishers. If Austin Arnett tires this guy out, he's going to beat him. He's beaten a lot of crappy opponents, and this could very well be a crappy opponent. And if Bandenay wins, Bandenay generally finishes crappy opponents. And it turns out Austin Arnett might be a crappy opponent. So I really do see a finish happening here. But Bandenay is way too expensive. So I'm just going to scratch that all off together. And $7,300 on Austin Arnett. You talk about saving money on Alka Sasaki. If you're going to take a lot of mid-range guys, you don't got to take that super cheap option.
No, you really don't.
So
the way that this one shakes out, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, and I would much rather take Austin Arnett and gamble a little bit than roll with Sasaki and hope for my 30 points and a loss.
Fair enough. Let's move on. We got Loreno Staropoli taking on Hector Aldana. 8,200 Staropoli plus 105 underdog. And Hector Aldana is 8,000 minus 125. You know what this is shaping up as?
This is
Hector Aldana Chalk Week.
Oh, no.
That sounds like a bad time altogether because you know how these things go. Now that he's the favorite and he's the underdog on DraftKings, people are going to be lining up to take him. Like this guy lost on the Ultimate Fighter, then he was flown out to China to take that L. Now he's getting flown into Argentina to fight one of the only people who are like him and Ponzinibbio are actually the only 2 guys on the card that are actually Argentinian by heritage.
Guido Cannetti?
Cannetti as well.
So the 3 of them.
Yeah. So the 3 of them, most of the other guys are like South American, different countries around there.
Which on a card like this is good enough, man.
They're bringing in this guy to lose, and everybody is lining up to bet and roster. Like Hector, I don't want to be part of that. This is either a full out stay away or you roster Staropoli. Like I don't think he looked horrible on tape, and I know that. What I'm expecting from Aldana isn't very much. Like I think it's a competitive fight, and if everybody's going to be on one side, you got to zig when other people are zagging. You don't have to roster this one. This could be a low-scoring match the way it plays out as it is, but I'm not touching Hector Aldana. I'm making my stand. What's your take?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go Hector Aldana. Hector Aldana, I'm actually very surprised. I was waiting for it the whole time. That I was thinking that you might allude to the fact that he might be the worst guy in the UFC.
That would be unfair to the rest of the guys on this card. There are a lot of guys that can make that argument for this week.
Yeah, fair. But he is your classic example of hold on to a guy in the bank in case we need to float somebody to win.
Why is everyone lining up to get action on him this week? This is another.
Well,
this
because
is
his
another,
opponent's really bad.
This
man.
is another Twitter mush special right here this week.
Yeah, I don't know. There's obviously takeaways that you can have, but I think when you look at other guys that could be argued in a similar situation, Guido Cannetti is oftentimes brought in as that guy. But Cannetti's got an actual skill set, you know? I mean, he's aggressive. He's a strong guy. He moves forward. He's got a decent cardio anyways. And, you know, he's got variables that he brings to the table. We talk about Austin Arnett, 0-3. You know, you mentioned, why is this guy even here? He's got a great manager. They're bringing him in to do something. But he's got some skills, you know? Like, he's a fairly durable guy. He gave better fighters than him, you know, a run for their money. He's got a decent little record. He's serviceable in some sense. There's something there. When I think about this matchup, Hector Aldana, you got to realize Hector Aldana was on The Ultimate Fighter in 2015.
And then he didn't fight.
He went 1-1 in The Ultimate Fighter. Right? He lost the second fight to Enrique Marin, choked out in a minute, and he was not on the finale. He did not fight for 3 years. He was on The Ultimate Fighter 3 years ago. Didn't fight on the finale. Went 1-1 in the show. Well, how did he even have a contract to the UFC? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. They kept that guy to feed him to Kenan Song in China because they had a local Chinese guy that they wanted him to look good. And Aldana didn't look as bad as I thought he was going to, considering he'd been off that long. His last pro fight, because both fights on the Ultimate Fighter exhibitions, last pro fight's 2013. That's a 5-year layoff between pro appearances. He didn't look that bad, but ultimately got knocked out in the second round, got finished. And now you're going to bring back this guy to another strange card in a weird foreign land.
Taking on the local.
Taking on another local guy. If you want to say it sounds like Austin Arnett's being brought in for a reason, this is being brought in for a reason. And whereas
everyone's going on the other side.
Yeah, and I tried to look at some Laureano Staropoli footage, and
there wasn't much out there.
Yeah, he doesn't look great. But to be honest, I've run into this case before. You see footage on guys, and it's really bad, and it's like 3 or 4 years ago, and then you just think this guy's really bad. I'm looking at it, and in that 3 or 4 years, it's made a big difference. And the thing with him is that he's similar in the sense that we're talking about Bandenay. Bandenay fights and beats low-level guys. Staropoli is the exact same, but he finishes guys. He fights low-level guys, and he finishes them. Hector Aldana is a low-level guy, and he could probably go out there and get the finish. The $8,200, if he's got a potential to go out there and win and get a finish in maybe the second, third round, maybe who cares what round? You won in the first or second round, but go out there, get a finish, get the victory, obviously, if you get the finish. The $8,200, buddy, big time. So...
And you box out a whole bunch of, trust me, the way that these odds are working, he's going to end up being probably some of the stone chalk on this card. Because Hector Aldana is going to be the stone chalk. Staropoli will not because of the odds.
Yeah.
That's just the way these things work.
Yeah.
So you're boxing out a lot of the field. Now, we're talking about you're still backing, guys that don't belong at this level for the most part. We don't know that yet about Staropoli. We do know that about Aldana, so...
Yeah, you're 100% right. The risk here, the gamble here is
did this guy improve?
Is that
since we've seen real grainy, terrible South American fight footage?
Yeah, that's the risk here. To sum it up, Staropoli could be and if he is, he's gonna fucking win here. And if it turns out he's shit, he's still got a chance of winning here, right? Yep. And, if it is a greasy decision, give it to our guy. Give it to our guy.
Whatever the home cooking is, if you forgot about that.
Leave it in the comments section what the home cooking is. And DK whatever that is,
give the show a like.
You'll get 20 DK bucks, and that's what Staropoli is hopefully going to get. Or, listen, more than realistically, I don't see this fight going the distance. And so hopefully he wins and he gets the finish and scores well for us.
We have Jesus Pinedo taking on Devin Powell. Jesus Pinedo, 8,500 on DraftKings, minus 220 favorite. Powell is 7,700 and plus 180. We talked earlier about Darren Elkins having the Homer Simpson style of fighting. Devin Powell, much less skilled version of Darren Elkins, to put it in perspective. This guy can take some damage. This guy, has taken damage. Didn't he have his nut blown off or ruptured a testicle while training? That's not a good time. The guy has no striking defense. He gets punished, but
no striking
he
defense.
Stays around. Pinedo, watched a little bit of tape on him. He actually looks all right.
Yeah.
When I made
He's got a good record, man.
When I made the boards,
he
was minus 180. and it's moved 40 points from then until, like, you know, when I made the boards coming into the show here. It moved 40 points, and I agree with the line movement. Like, I think this Pinedo kid looks all right. I don't think that he's a world-class, you know, guy to watch out for to win a belt or anything like that, but you don't need to be that to beat Devin Powell. I'm in complete agreement with the line movement. I think Pinedo's a good play. Just because Devin Powell doesn't have striking defense, he's going to take a lot of damage. I like Pinedo here. I like him actually kind of big, and hopefully he's not very old.
Yeah, you know, it's the kind of spot that you look at Pinedo, and you like him, and you think he's got a good shot here, and he does, and he might be able to get the finish, and the price is potentially right on him, and you like him. And I honestly do kind of feel the same way against Laureano Staropoli, and maybe to a lesser extent, if you're going to go with Bandenay, it's the same thought process. The thing that all three of those guys got in common is we just don't really know enough about them.
No.
You can back them on the limited stuff that you have, but you don't know what's going to happen once that cage
It's always the risk that you take on these low-level cards.
It's hard to get a read. So what we've actually done here is that with Bandenay, the thought process for a lot of people is he's fighting a shit opponent. It doesn't matter how good he is. Maybe he's bad. I just literally said the exact same thing in the last fight, which I'm going to get to. But Austin Arnett's maybe not all that bad. That's why that one's a pass to me. Staropoli Aldana, we know Aldana's really bad. Staropoli, we don't really know yet. So you're just taking that chance. You're just banking on Staropoli that maybe he's just that little bit good enough. And Jesus Pinedo's the same thing. We know Devin Powell's bad. That's the issue here. We don't really know how good Pinedo is going to be. But Powell's really bad, man. He's got no athleticism. And that's just an issue. It's going to be an issue when you fight at the highest level. He is very hittable. Another one of these guys that's tall, stands upright, and you can just bomb off on him. He can take a hell of a punch, no doubt about it. But it's worrisome when you're taking a hell of a punch all the time. And I'll admit, fighting Drakkar Close, who's not a finisher in the slightest bit, but a tough guy. Impressive enough. Daryl Horcher, you know. Horcher's not great, but he comes from a boxing background. He's got some decent hands, you know. He takes a beating in that fight early, and he lives to tell the tale, and he grinds it out later. But it's his fight. He was on a Dana White looking for a fight episode against John Lemke in Maine. Mm-hmm. There's not very few guys other than maybe Tim Sylvia and Marcus Davis. I don't know if Tim Boach is born in Maine or not. But anyways, there's very few guys from Maine that have ever made to the UFC. There's not a very good regional scene. Probably one of the worst regional scenes in all the U.S. Devin Powell, not the level. He fights John Lemke, 5-6, on a card in Maine that Dana White is only at because he happens to have a house in Maine. And he gets his nose shattered and wins. Like, the guy just takes damage. He is another Homer Simpson of MMA. Strange how this card ends up picking up two of them. Very strange, but it's just that kind of card.
It's not that strange.
Well, it's just that kind of card. But when you look at his opponent, Jesus Pinedo, Pinedo's aggressive. He's a good finisher. He's got a lot of submission wins on his record, and that's Devin Powell's kind of go-to. Powell won his last fight with a body kick over Alvaro Herrera, but man,
We kind of
lucky
we
ass
sat here
body
kind of
kick.
knew that was
We
it was
picked
one
him.
way or the other. We're saying
We picked him.
roster that fight because both of these guys, someone's getting the finish and
Yeah.
someone's scoring big, and it happened to be Powell.
We picked him, but it was your classic Devin Powell fight, save for he got the win. Just like the John Lemke fight. He got shit kicked in the early portion of that fight. And then as Herrera is on him, he throws like a fadeaway liver kick, just kind of like backing his opponent away, and Herrera just crumples. Do you want to call it a fluky strike? It is what it is. An MMA fight. You know, he knew what he was doing. He meant to throw the strike. Not a lucky strike, but it was also like, damn, dude, you're kind of lucky that one landed. I think that Pineda's just going to be on him, and that lucky body strike maybe just doesn't happen. I think
I agree.
At 22 years old, he's young. He is faster. He is aggressive. He's going to have the power advantage. Powell's one area of expertise would be, I think Powell is a black belt. He's a black belt out of Maine, which is a purple belt in California, but at least he's got some grappling. But with Pineda, even though he's only 22 and he's from South America, so his grappling is, should be spotty. I don't know that the fight's going to take place all that often on the ground because, well, Powell just has an inability to get the fight to the ground. His wrestling's pretty much non-existent. If it stays standing, the younger kid's just going to land those bigger strikes, gets the win. I don't think he gets the finish, and for that reason, the 8,500 is not particularly, something that I want to run towards. And the 220, this is an unheralded kid making his UFC debut. He's got 20 pro fights. That's impressive, especially for a 22-year-old. But do I want to get a whole lot of faith behind him? But one thing I will say about this is that you can't bet, even though he's coming off a win, you can't bet Devin Powell. You just can't, in good conscience, bet a guy.
He's going to take an absolute beating.
That level of athleticism.
And has basically no skill.
Devin Powell, I'm just making this up, but this is how I truly feel.
Sure.
Devin Powell has already suffered the biggest humiliation in the history of the world. So losing a fight is no big deal to him. And that humiliation is he's so unathletic. That Devin Powell was more than likely the kid that the head coach pulled off the floor to put on Air Bud to replace him in the game, because that's where he's operating.
Shots fired.
Well, think about it, the feel. If the coach is like, Shaughnessy, you're off. Air Bud, you're in, and a dog just replaced you. That would crush your soul. But that would also tell you you're a terrible athlete. And all jokes aside, the guy's fighting in the UFC. He's tough. He's entertaining. I do respect him. It's going to sound like I'm being a huge dick right now, but I'm just trying to allude to the fact that you
That's
can't.
right. People who get this far in the episode know that we're assholes at this point, right?
Fair enough. Don't harp on me too bad. I actually do like watching Devin Powell fights, but
yeah, they're entertaining.
this isn't Bellator, which he would probably lose on the undercard of Bellator. This isn't PFL, where he would probably not advance past the first round of that tournament. This is not ONE FC, where he would probably get flattened by some Team Lakai guy out of.
This is the UFC where he's getting flown into lose.
Philippines. Yeah. This is, hey, dude, how's your nut feeling? It's back together? Okay, well.
Let's go.
You mind can you
Game
fly? Because if you can fly, we got a task for you.
Finally, we have Nad Narimani taking on Anderson Dos Santos. Nad Narimani is 9,100 on DraftKings, minus 320 favorite. Anderson Dos Santos is 7,100 and plus 260. Your thoughts?
Anderson Dos Santos is one of those rare guys that has fucked me over before he ever even got to the UFC. Because I was all over, let me just bring this up here. I was all over Ricky Simon, Titan FC 37. Like, come on, dude. Simon's taking on short-nosed replacement Dos Santos. Dos Santos don't look like much. He's got a spotty record. Ricky Simon's undefeated. He's the man. Dos Santos is actually coming off a loss coming into that fight, which he took on short notice. And he submits Ricky Simon. Terrible. Loses his next fight, defending the title. And he's kind of been like up and down since then. He took on Khabib's, I want to say cousin, Saeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched that one.
Yeah, exactly. And, Saeed's a very talented guy, a small
Guillotine
guy.
choke finish for Saeed.
Saeed's a flyweight, right? So with Dos Santos, he's not really the biggest of guys. And maybe, he's got submission victories on his record. He's also been caught in his career as well. He's kind of like an up or down. He's managed to get three fights together, like a 3-fight winning streak, which is kind of, I don't want to say rare for him, but he's not really a lengthy win streak kind of guy. He's more of a win a couple over mid-level opponents and then cap out. I was actually very surprised to see him on this card personally. And not Narimani should be able to get the job done. I mean, he looks okay. When watching
I think he's the safe guy on this card, to be perfectly honest.
He's the safe guy. The one thing is that he's not above just muscling you down and holding you down, because he's this really strong guy, but he doesn't really have any big finishing characteristics. No. He's not going to go out there and knock you out with a big one strike. He's not going to take you down and submit you. He can submit you, but mostly it's just like power submission moves. Mostly just holds you down, takes you down, and holds you down. He's extremely physically strong. You watch his fight with Paddy Pimblett, it's a great fight. And it really illustrates how even wicked submission guys like Paddy Pimblett just don't have no success against guys that are that strong and can just kind of neutralize a lot of that offense. His next fight with Khalid Taha, that's his UFC debut. Taha is interesting because he's a German prospect that no one's really heard of. He was in the Rising Grand Prix. Guy's a badass, man. And he didn't look all that bad, but again, Narimani is a strong guy.
He scored 100 points in that fight.
100 points in a decision victory, right? Because these lower weight class guys, they move really fast. Narimani, there's lots of transitions. Yep. There's lots of movement. He lands strikes. He's not a guy that lays in praise. If he's on you, he's going to be chipping away at you. He can score. And Anderson Dos Santos, he's susceptible to that. He's not going to have the strength advantage. He's not going to have the grappling advantage. And whereas I do think he might be able to survive.
Like from the limited tape I watched on him, he doesn't look like he's his ring IQ is not at a high level. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's
like
got a lot.
He just never really hand fought and stuff against Saeed when he got choked out in that fight in Akhmat. And yeah, I think Narimani, if I'm gonna pay up for anybody on this card, like that's the guy I feel safest with. Maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling as some of these guys would potentially have, but there's safety in it. I think a 90-point scoring is very, very likely.
Yeah, no,
that won't kill you.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. Narimani, he's shown that even in a dominant decision victory that he can score over 100 points, and that's what we're looking for him out of here. He might be able to go out and get a dominant decision victory and potentially score us 100 points. So the thing that you're alluding to with Anderson Dos Santos is that maybe his ring IQ is not huge. he's one of those potent Brazilian finishers, kind of a Brazilian front runner, is that he has a lot of finishes. In 20 pro wins, he's got 17 finishes versus just 3 by decision. So generally what happens, he's also been finished in a lot of his 6 losses. He'll try to go and submit you and knock you out in the first round. If that doesn't really happen, he kind of gets finished himself. And with Narimani, he's going to be tough. He's going to be durable. Dos Santos will probably give him a go in the first round, and then Narimani will set a pace on him, wear him down, take him down. Might be able to get a late TKO, might be able to get a late submission. But even if he just dominates this guy for 3 and we can get 100 points out of it, I agree. I think cash game play, you got to go with Narimani. $9,100 is expensive, especially for cash, but here's a card with a lot of value. And if you're looking for safe cash game plays, and traditionally your cash game plays are going to be some of your safer guys that you're giving up a little bit of that potential scoring for the safeness of them, then he's one of them. And if you're looking to parlay 320, then that's a lot. Him and Pantoja together, 2 3-1 favorites, then you can toss up a couple extra guys that you like in the mix. But certainly having those 2 guys on a...
And then on top of that, if Narimani loses, then you just load up on the TV slate. Because your night is over.
There you go.
It's first fight on the card.
You
so
lose
that's,
early and you can rebuild.
Hey, we've all been there before.
The sad thing
is... You shouldn't actually probably chase like that, but I'm sure most of us fellow degenerates have been there before.
No, listen, there's no doubt about it. If you're listening to the show till this point, we're chasing. We're chasing if we lose in the first fucking fight. But the problem is that on DK, you can't chase. You know, your lineup's fucked, and you have to watch the rest of the card and know you're pretty much out of it. You play multiple lineups, you're not going to have Narimani on all of them. But at the same time, he seems like the kind of play that you're gonna want some shares of.
So remember, if you want any DraftKings dollars this week, what you got to do, give the show a like. You got to share your DK handle. And finally, you got to tell us what the home cooking dish in Argentina happens to be. Get in there, do that. You have any final thoughts?
No. Listen, let's just hopefully keep the good times rolling. I think last week we were super spot on.
We've been good the last few weeks.
The paying up for Davi Ramos and Macy Barber was big. The getting the value on the Donald Cerrone was obviously clutch. And there was some good value to be had on that card. With Mike Perry. Mike Perry's a classic example because you see this on every single card. It's happening on this card. When people like you that much, the line's just never truthfully right. And as much as he's been shit on, he's entertaining, he's Mike Perry. The thing with Mike Perry is I firmly do believe this. Paul Shaughnessy. Mike Perry will someday be a world champion.
Of
but
Bellator?
But not in MMA. He's not ever going to be an MMA world champion.
What's he going to be a world champion of?
Bare knuckle boxing, dog.
Yeah.
He is
built for that.
He is bred for bare knuckle boxing.
He doesn't care if he bleeds.
No. His style is tailor-made for 3 2-minute rounds where he gets in your face and bombs you. And
bare knuckle boxing is building, it's growing now. There's multiple promotions. Some of these guys are getting paid decent. Johnny Hendricks, oh my God, stop. Stop fighting, dude. Dakota Cochran absolutely smashed him.
But straight up, do you know
that was ugly.
Do you know what Mike Perry would do to either of those guys?
Kill.
Johnny Hendricks
Absolutely
or fucking
kill.
Dakota Cochran? There'd be no shot. He is tailor-made for Perry. What? Could you imagine this for a second? Mike Perry versus Chris Lee. I just came in my pants, Paul. We got to wrap up the show. I got to go change. Mike Perry versus Chris Lee in bare knuckle boxing? Oh, man. All I'm saying is he's got very little skills outside of his entertainment. And, he likes to get in the pocket and throw them hands. You know who else had a lot of charisma, 0 MMA skills, but like to get all up in there and throw them hands?
Phil Baroni, who got knocked out by Chris Lieben.
I was going to say Kimbo Slice, but why'd you have to bring that up and ruin my day?
That looked like a work, by the way.
It wasn't a work, but as a Baroni fan, longtime backer and supporter,
that looked like a work.
That was the second.
That looked like a work.
That was the second saddest thing I saw that night.
Yeah.
And that was real sad. That was heartbreaking. I went to bed right afterwards.
It was really bad.
And terrible sleep.
I felt awful. I was just oh, sweet. There's some bare knuckle boxing on. Let's tune in, watch it. And I was just like, I was so sad by the end of that card. Johnny Hendricks' death and
oh yeah, the 4 saddest things on that entire card. Okay, in this exact
legends
order.
Legends go to bare knuckle boxing to die.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly it. The 4 saddest things on that card in this exact order. Number 4, I paid the $29.99 for it. Number 3, Johnny Hendricks losing to a former gay porn star by second round knockout. Hilarity at its greatest. Number 2. Phil Baroni, dude, what were you doing? And the saddest thing of the entire night, Was that Mark Coleman in Phil Baroni's corner? Fuck, he looked bad, dude. That was heartbreaking. I saw him, I was like, oh my God. Doing steroids and fighting and trying out for the Olympics, lifelong wrestling career, all those things mixed into one. Bad for you. That was very heartbreaking seeing him. And then as soon as they announced Phil Baroni, and I was done crying on the inside for the ghost of Mark Coleman standing on the ring apron. I then watched the ghost of Phil Baroni attempt 3 lackluster takedowns and then get fucking dusted with a short counter. Terrible. But what can you do? Hopefully they book Riggs versus Chris Lieben next. That'll give Perry enough time to get caught. Perry versus Joe Riggs? Light heavyweight bare knuckle boxing?
That's going to break your heart again. You ready for a Friday night for you to be
round
miserable?
2 right now, I would have just gone.
Yeah. All right, thanks to Cody Saftic.
Yeah,
bringing the heat as always. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ Saftic. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Shag. Thanks to Pat Mayo for doing all the sweet cuts behind the glass. For all of those guys, I am Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Fat Mayo Experience! Experience!